Let's be honest here. The US is a totalitarian country. The neoliberals running the government are just as authoritarian as any communist or fascist regime. Just look at what's going on right now with the election. Donald Trump is just a slight deviation from the neoliberal norm. He was just a little bit skeptical of globalism. Instead of wallowing in white guilt, Donald Trump focused on actually delivering results to minorities. This approach to identity politics is sacrilegious to the neoliberals. But even these slightest deviations from neoliberal norms drove these people batshit fucking insane. Institution after institution in our country drop any pretense of legitimacy to spurg out over evil orange man Trump. There's more anti-Trump propaganda in our culture today than there was anti-Hitler propaganda during World War II. Leading up to the election, Trump seemed poised to win. I mean, look at the fact that he's easily able to get something like 50,000 people to show up to some of his rallies. Then you had those huge caravans of all the pro-Trump cars. Meanwhile, the rare times where Biden actually appeared in public, well, he'd be lucky if he could even get 30 people to show up. I was foolish to be optimistic. Everything else in our society can be characterized by its fraudulent or authoritarian nature. Why would the election be any different? When the media for months told us that Trump was way down in the polls, they were lying. All of the media was lying. Fox News was lying. Polls saying Biden was up by 17 points in Wisconsin aren't mistakes. That's deliberate propaganda. When the media did a total blackout on the Hunter Biden story, that was fraud. The justification given that it was Russian interference in the election was also a lie. Speaking of Russian interference, pretty much anything that you hear anyone say about Russia is bullshit. Remember that indictment they got against a group of Russian nationals? It was fucking dismissed a week before trial. Why would a prosecutor dismiss his case a week before trial? Well, a prosecutor would do that if his criminal case was based on lies and bullshit. What about the numerous lies we've heard constantly repeated again and again by Democrats and journalists? The very fine people hoax. The bullshit story of Donald Trump calling the military a bunch of suckers. That's one that even neoliberal Trump hater John Bolton admitted wasn't true. Yet you wouldn't know that if you watched the presidential debates. I'd think that moderating a presidential debate would be a pretty big fucking deal. Like you'd expect only the best journalists to be doing something like that. It's hard for me to believe that the presidential debate moderators are deeply misinformed on the issues. No, they have an agenda. Trump isn't neoliberal enough and therefore he needs to get taken out. It's total and complete gaslighting. They try and make us think Trump is worse than Hitler. It also makes no fucking sense. Remember George W. Bush? How he lied about Iraq having WMDs? How he started the 2 longest wars in US history? One of which was based, again, on a fucking lie? Yet I'm supposed to believe George W. Bush is great and Trump is evil. So if everything else is a giant lie, why would anyone trust in the integrity of the election? Right now, Trump's campaign has alleged numerous examples of flagrant voting fraud. The media won't cover it. Trump tries to do press conferences and they don't get played on TV. He tries to talk about it on social media and he gets censored. Does this seem like normal business in a democratic country? Or is this something that you would expect in a fascist dictatorship? Because to me, this is something that I'd expect in a fascist dictatorship. In North Korea, I would expect the media to cover up news stories that aren't flattering to Kim Jong-un. I wouldn't expect that in a country that's supposedly free and non-authoritarian. Why would anyone want to censor anyone else? Well, you do that because you don't want them talking about things. Things that are bad. Things that are fraudulent that are going on. In totalitarian countries, lots of censorship takes place. The US didn't used to be like that, but now it is. I'm risking my YouTube channel by telling the truth about these things. There's a non-trivial chance that this video will get my channel banned off the platform. Honestly, I just don't give a fuck anymore. Let me just spell it out. This election is a complete joke. Trump was set to win on election night. It was going to be 2016 all over again. That isn't surprising whatsoever. There isn't a goddamn person in America who hasn't made up their mind about Trump a long time ago. Given the nasty way Trump and his voters have been treated this entire time, there is no one who voted for Trump who then switched sides. The idea that a huge portion of Trump's voters abandoned him is complete bullshit. Everyone knows it's bullshit. So on election night, Trump is winning as expected, and then bam, all these swing states just stopped counting votes. Radio silence until 4 a.m. when everyone's asleep. At 4 a.m., a massive dump of votes in Michigan and Wisconsin occurs. We're talking votes for Biden at nearly 100%. How is any precinct 100% for Biden? Even in left-wing California, 30% of the population voted for Trump. Then you have the really obvious fraud. Like more people voting in certain districts in Wisconsin than who are actually registered to vote. Something that's literally impossible in the absence of fraud. In the places they're counting the vote in Detroit, they hang up pizza boxes and other coverings so people can't see what's going on. And then let's talk about Arizona. Arizona released 84% of its vote on election day. The next day, they released 4%. A whole fucking day to count 4% of the vote? Look, I wasn't born yesterday. Everyone seems to agree Joe Biden is corrupt. The first time he ran for president, he dropped out in disgrace after he was exposed as a liar and a plagiarist. Biden's been heavily funded by money through credit card companies in order to make it more difficult for middle-class people to file for bankruptcy. He has completely lied about it and said these laws help working people. How does making it harder for any individual person to file for bankruptcy help them? Joe Biden stands for nothing. A vote for him is voting for the CIA to run the government. A couple videos ago, I did one saying that all Joe Biden would do is start more wars. Well, guess what? I was fucking right. I know I'm right because Obama admitted it.
What he's done is he's systematically tried to decimate our entire foreign policy infrastructure. Right? He has a respect and understanding for what American leadership can do. We kind of underwrite the international order. And in the sense that even our enemies expect us to behave like adults on the international stage. If there's a crisis somewhere, people don't call Moscow or Beijing, they call us and say, what are we going to do there?
Nobody likes to think of the US as a totalitarian country. That doesn't mean it's not, though. Elections are rigged, people are censored, dissent is stamped out. These days, the US is basically the same society described in Brave New World. Practically every state in the union has legalized marijuana at this point. Oregon just legalized all hard drugs. I'd expect that trend to extend to all states the longer time goes on. The fascist neoliberals running our country need us addicted to soma in order to make us passive and compliant. That's why male testosterone rates in our country have plummeted. It's also why they'll probably get away with all this shit. In fact, drugs are a great example of why we live in a totalitarian country. For 6 fucking decades, we've known the origin of narcotic drugs. Everyone knows they're smuggled in from Mexico. Millions upon millions of people have died from these drugs. They've died growing them in Mexico. They've died on the border. They've died in the US from dealing these drugs. And then you have all of the deaths by overdose. I don't give a fuck how much money we make from Mexico's ports of entry. However much it is, it can't be enough to justify the deaths of millions of people. Yet it would be absolutely unthinkable for the neolibs to shut down the ports of entry. Not even Trump has proposed doing something like that. Something so crazy that it would save the lives of millions of people. That's how we're brainwashed by the neoliberals. The idea of a non-liberal solution to any given problem is just completely unfathomable. What about this? We all know how horrible the US oppressed black people, right? You know, it was so bad that you can't even criticize a black person for pretty much anything. Yet no one talks about the US and the Philippines. Nobody talks about Cornelius Rhodes giving people cancer in Puerto Rico. You see, the neoliberals can call the American people racist. They do it all the time. Remember, we're the deplorables. We're just dumb racist hicks to these people. What they absolutely won't allow is anything taught in schools that make them look bad. That's why no one talks about the Philippines. It's why, unless you're a big fan of this channel, you probably have no fucking clue who Cornelius Rhodes even is. If you take away anything from this video, take away this. Perhaps it isn't the case that the US is the good guy and the Nazis and the commies are the bad guys. Maybe they're all the bad guys. And I know what you're thinking. We're so much better off financially than the rest of the world. Oh yeah, we're way better off. The average American has a negative net worth. This is due to, of course, debt. Who was the politician that paved the way for the credit card companies? Well, it happens to be the same one that made student loan debt non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. Joe fucking Biden. So instead of starving, we're morbidly obese, hopelessly in debt, and addicted to pornography and drugs. Somehow, I'm supposed to believe that that makes my country the good one? Fuck no. If Joe Biden steals the election, it'll be like the AI president from Fallout 3 running the government. Biden will spend all day asleep while whoever's actually running our government does fascist imperial things. So what can you do? Stop assuming these institutions are fair. You're just gonna get screwed playing by their rules. Don't consume the soma. It's a trap. If the media lies to you about everything, and they do, chances are there's a lot more people also lying. I'm sorry I don't have a glass of water for you to swallow this black pill with. I apologize for not having more interesting video content for this video like most of my others. Given that it's topical related to the election, I wanted to make sure it got out. I didn't want to make the video perfect and then miss the timetable of the election. Anyways, if you've made it this far, I'm sure you're pretty aware then that this is a political channel that gives you an alternate point of view. Something you're not going to get from the mainstream left or right. So please support small YouTube channels like mine by subscribing. Thanks.